Welcome everybody to the Lion's Den. I'm here with my brother William and my brother Elijah. Yes, welcome back, guys, to Mi Casa Su Casa. I'm learning Spanish from William's channel.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother, for having us.
Thanks for having us, man.
I think you guys' channels are linked in the description. I know for the first one it is. I'll make sure this one is too. Thanks for coming on again. And so this is part 2. I think part 1 was really good. I liked it a lot. And I'm excited for this one because after you guys, I'm sure you guys could guess, with topics like original sin, atonement, these types of things, Orthodox are very like their antennas go up when they hear these words, right?
All the time.
Yeah. So then they're hearing this, and then they're thinking, okay, is this the same thing that we believe? Is it different? Yeah. What are they actually saying? And a lot of people were asking questions. We sat down and talked about it here at home, like with the people I know. So we're looking forward to this one.
I'm pumped.
Yeah, man.
You bring up a good point, Subdeacon, that a lot of the times when you talk about both atonement, original sin, people will then wonder, okay, well, what version are you all going to be talking about or promoting? So it's important that we lay it out what we believe, the view of the Bible, the view of the early church. I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Me too. Excited. And I mean, from what I was able to understand from the first one and talking to you guys just normal over the years, is that there isn't a difference,
right?
It's like the difference is the way that they talk about it or semantics. Yeah, there isn't like a substantial difference. Is that what the direction is?
I don't know. I mean, when that Eastern Orthodox, when it comes to Oriental Orthodox in the Catholic Church,
yeah,
I don't really see a difference. But since that Eastern Orthodox priest made a video on original sin, and then there was like this war in the Eastern Orthodox Twitter, right, going back and forth as to what is the real teaching, and then they have two sides, and I think you guys had two sides, right, until recently. You guys had a
it seems that, but I'm not sure still if the issue is over the lexicon, original sin, the name. I don't think we have the name, the word for it. I don't know if it's there in the Syriac lecture, the way we talk.
Yeah.
And I think really the meat of the matter is like the actual substance here is what is being understood. Is that the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for the most part it is, but you have folks where they try to de-Romanize or de-Latinize ideas. So they're like, oh, that sounds Latin, so we're just going to say we don't believe in that. That sounds too Augustine, so we're not going to believe in that.
And your point is that this isn't just Augustine, this is the East too.
Correct. And I actually have quotes from Eastern Fathers today, like Athanasius and Cyril and Gregory of Nyssa. So I didn't bring any. I think I have maybe Ambrose is one Western, but everyone else I have is Eastern Father. And it's an interesting topic, and I don't honestly think there's a official stance from Eastern Orthodoxy, because you do have a certain time period where they were influenced by Latins, like some parts in Eastern Orthodox, where you have some catechisms where it does sound very Augustinian, and they're kind of embarrassed by it in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And then if you go to Jerusalem 1672, I think is the date, right, William? 1672, the synod. You read that synod and it sounds very Augustinian, like, babies being guilty of sin if they're not baptized. It sounds very Western, right? Yeah. So it depends on the century. So there's never been, not to my knowledge, a definition that's official from the Eastern Orthodox saying, here's what we believe. And that's why there's so much confusion out there. I guess 1672 didn't cut it because there's still confusion out there.
Yeah, no, to piggyback off of that, Elijah, you made a lot of very good points there. I completely agree. I think the main issue is, and I've pointed out to a number of my Eastern friends, is the heavy influence. And I saw that our good friend Dioscorus is watching. He can echo this. He knows very well. The heavy influence of Father Romanides on Eastern Orthodox theology has been profound. And in Father Romanides, and by the way, for our Oriental Orthodox friends, my friends, brothers and sisters, and Catholic friends that may be tuning in, you should learn who he is. If you're dialoguing with Eastern Orthodox, you got to know who he is. He has influenced a massive amount of their thought in the modern day. He was very anti-Latin to the point where anything Augustinian he would trash, even though when Augustine talks about original sin, it is very Cyrillian. Very Cyrillian. He would denigrate the status of saints that are recognized in the Eastern Church. And that kind of hostility passed on over to the modern day, and a lot of people adopt Father Romanides. Now, there are some that'll say, no, the guy was totally off, the guy was totally wrong. But there are massive groups that love the guy and embrace the guy. And in my opinion, you look at Father Romanides, and right there, you're going to encounter major issues with theology. I've read him. I've read everything I can get my hands on when it comes to Father Romanides, and he really does get the patristics, in my opinion, very, very wrong. And unfortunately, creates a lot of hostility. Created.
And so the Romanides view is not the same.
Oh, no. Okay. No, not at all. In fact, you're going to find that Romanides is a massive disconnect from earlier Eastern patristic sources, massively so that Romanides will have to misrepresent Augustine massively. There's a text from Augustine that he'll take out of context where if you read it in the context, Augustine sounds just like Cyril when they're talking about this particular topic. But that is not only Augustine. You're going to find many fathers that he'll wrench out of context, almost like to me, I find it so problematic that it's almost a Eastern side of the world versus the rest of the world. Whereas in Catholicism over here, and I agree even in Oriental Orthodoxy, overall, we're going to say, and I'll use myself as an example, we'll say, hey, we've got Ambrose, we've got Augustine, we have all these great Latin Western fathers that are utilizing particular language, but hey, they're echoing the same stuff that the great Ephraim would have said, that the great John Chrysostom would have said. Why do we look for that reconciliation? Because we argue that the church is Catholic, universal. We're not trying to say, oh, this particular father over here taught correctly, and before any schism, these others that we all hold in communion as great saints, they had a heretical theology. We don't do that. We just don't do that.
And then I want to give a basic understanding of what I believe, and let me know if this is something that you guys would agree on. In a nutshell, we were created in a state of grace, and because of this grace, we were immortal, not by nature, but by grace, right?
Correct.
And when the grace was, when we sinned, and that grace was stripped away from us, now we were left to our nature, not without that grace, which is corruptible.
Perfect.
And because of that, we die.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct.
And so when we're baptized, we're restored to this grace.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That's about it. I mean, it's simple. I don't know why we complicate these things. I think the issue is people want to emphasize the temporal punishments of sin, like death. And I know some Eastern Orthodox folks who are also, they emphasize death so much that they forget about salvation, right? The death of the soul, death of the body, and the death of the soul. And they're like, oh, original sin is all about the death of the body.
Yeah.
So where did the death of the soul come from, right? So, and I think, William, you had a debate with Father John Ramsey on this, and that was apparently his stance, right?
And you both very clearly are well aware that during the cross-examination, all I did was quote his own saints for him,
right?
And the reason I did that was to show that before you get to the time of Romanides and later, they're echoing what we all believe in terms of original sin.
Yeah.
So ultimately, my problem is this, Subdeacon and Elijah. I'd love your opinions. My problem is this: if within Eastern Orthodoxy, there are things that early on, when we were united as one, early on, and then later in history, before the schism in the medieval era, if they believed certain things that today they deny, and we can look in history and show that they believed, and today they not only deny these things, but they reject them strongly. To me, that is very problematic. What are they going to reject in 50 years, or 70 years?
So where would Father Romanides disagree with what I said? Which part?
William, you've read him. I've only read quotes, so I think he would probably emphasize death.
Yes,
right?
heavily emphasize death, and unfortunately, his heavy emphasis on death would be along the lines of death categorically, without exception, means one had original sin. Right. Now, of course, he's going to draw that exception. Christ voluntarily gave up his life. He still died, though. Voluntarily gave up his life or not, our Lord died on the cross. So I find a lot of problems there in his theology. And the other thing with Father Romanides is that a lot of his very grandiose statements don't have patristic backing, and he doesn't provide it a lot of the time. So that to me is another very big problem there. He will try to wedge great differences between us where they really don't need to be. Like, look, I'll point the audience to a debate or a dialogue that Elijah had. I don't know if it's 3 years ago or 4, with Father Ramsey on original sin, I believe. I think that was the topic, or the Immaculate Conception.
Both,
where Elijah over and over is saying, Father, we agree here. We're on the same page. But Father Ramsey wouldn't have any of it. Even though over and over Elijah kept saying, look, we agree there. We agree here. Can we find common ground? And unfortunately, for certain individuals, it's like, look, you don't want to find any common ground. I don't know if they feel threatened in some way, but I don't feel threatened when I find common ground with my Oriental Orthodox brothers and sisters, or my Eastern Orthodox ones. I don't find any threat there.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I like to bring folks on to my channel, is to dialogue topics that we supposedly disagree on, but let's see where we can find common ground. And you guys know I'm not an ecumenist, so it's not that kind of let's find common ground, but it's more of, let's talk about what we agree on, and then we can talk about what we disagree on, because we do disagree. But don't get me wrong.
Okay.
But this is
on
not
this topic.
Not this topic. No.
Okay. Yeah.
Not this. Not at least. Again, Eastern Orthodox, I don't think there's an official stance, but sometimes I wonder if the two groups are talking past each other.
Me too.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder that, but I'm not in the conversation, so I wouldn't know. I can't say yes or no. It's an anti-Roman thing, which is why I said Romanides on there, because it's kind of ironic. His name is Romanides.
Elijah, keeping with his Syriac fathers with the play on words.
Oh yeah, there you go. I was born with it.
Yeah.
Subdeacon, have you read Romanides at all?
I have not.
Okay.
I read the stuff he said concerning Leo and Theodoret.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you guys want to get into the topic, I mean, Subdeacon, you pretty much summarized it beautifully. So and let me know where you would disagree with this. So there's in the Western church, right, in the Latin church, which I would hope all churches would agree with this, including even Protestants. The effects of the fall are as follows. So here's what I have for effects of the fall. The death of the soul, which is the loss of salvation. So like you said, grace, right, is taken away. So now we're corruptible. The death of the body, death, physical death. Concupiscence, because the as Saint Ephrem talks about, because Adam and Eve disobeyed God and they chose to go with the devil, now we have this struggle between God and ourselves and our demons, right? So it's being pulled. So what happened at the fall affected us directly in so many ways, so that, the fact that they were conversating with the devil, they disobeyed God, that's what caused concupiscence, that part of it, because now we're struggling between two sides. Original holiness and justice is lost. So where Adam and Eve were made holy originally, they were just before the eyes of God. They lost that when they fell. Original grace was lost, and we became corruptible, as Subdeacon said. Intellect and will was weakened, right? So now, like, Adam and Eve was the smartest man ever lived, right? Because he was pre-fallen. So was Eve, right? And so their will, not just their intellect, but their will was also weakened. Passability is something else that we got. The ability to, not the ability, but the fact that we suffer. that's what passability is, that we could suffer. And we became under the dominion of the devil because we obeyed the devil. And so now we're underneath him and all these effects. And then we were kicked out of paradise. Those are the effects of the fall. Hopefully everyone agrees with that. But what are your thoughts on that, Subdeacon?
I no issue. I mean, I'm guessing this stuff was what maybe Pelagius might have had a problem with. I don't know. Like, is there an idea in the Catholic Church that Pelagius might have been misunderstood? Is that a thing or no?
I don't think so. I mean, he thought that you can be saved by your own will.
So without grace.
Without grace, correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, with your own power, I should say. Yeah, I mean, that was, and this is why, in the West it's so emphasized that you need grace and all this stuff, where Augustine is talking about this, right? And Protestants, they take it and they run with it. But I having conversations with you guys on for so many years, where I come from is, let's see what they were answering to, right? What are they answering to? So for example, and I know this is a Oriental Orthodox channel, but when it was Nestorius versus Cyril, Nestorius was emphasizing 2, so Cyril was emphasizing 1. Then Chalcedon came, and of course, obviously you guys have your own, interpretation of everything, but the interpretation is that emphasis was too much on 1, so they were emphasizing 2, and that's a very general way of looking at it. It's over.
You said it right. You said it right.
Yeah, so it's like, what are they answering to? Like a Council of Orange, right? Answering to, the people that think that grace is not necessary. Then you look at the Council of Trent, and they're answering the Protestants, where they're thinking that works is not necessary. So you got to understand, what is the question being answered here, and who's behind the question?
There's a reaction, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
even the icon councils, it always comes to us in the Syriac Rite churches, like Syriac Orthodox, Assyrian Church of the East, Chaldean Catholic, etc. They ask us all the time, how come you guys don't have iconography like us?
Sure.
Because we didn't have the heresy like you.
Exactly. That's a great point.
Yeah. We didn't have it to have the reaction to it.
Yeah.
Or you guys had to double down.
Yeah.
We didn't need to double down because we didn't have the problem to begin with.
That's beautiful. That's a great point. That's a great point. But you guys still have iconography, but you don't have the emphasis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We, of course, we have icons in our churches, but it's not something like we had to fight a war about it.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then if I read this, so this is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, 404. So if I read this, every Eastern Orthodox or Oriental Orthodox would probably agree with it, but I'm going to read it if you don't mind. So it says, "How did the sin of Adam become the sin of all his descendants? The whole human race is in Adam, as one body of one man. By this unity of the human race, all men are implicated in Adam's sin, as all are implicated in Christ's justice. Still, the transmission of original sin is a mystery that we cannot fully understand. But we do know by revelation that Adam had received original holiness and justice, not for himself alone, but for all human nature. By yielding to the tempter, Adam and Eve committed a personal sin, but this sin affected the human nature, that they would then transmit it in a fallen state. It is a sin which will be transmitted by propagation to all mankind, that is, by the transmission of a human nature deprived of original holiness and justice. And that is why original sin is called sin only in an analogical sense. It is a sin contracted and not committed, a state and not an act." So in other words, and this is where the confusion comes in with Catholics saying, oh, we believe in guilty babies, right? Or if you're born guilty or conceived in guilt. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that they committed a sin themselves, right? It means that the state that they're born in, it's a state void of grace.
In sin, my mother conceived me.
Yeah, right. And so they don't have the grace, they don't have the original justice. So they are in a state of needing that. So if you need something, then you are lacking something. So if you're lacking something, then you are, in a sense, guilty. But there are different ways of looking at the word guilty in Latin. It's not a personal guilt directly. And I think, William, I don't know if you know the Latin.
Point.
Yeah,
no doubt. So here is another thing that you're going to find in Augustine, you're going to find in Cyril, and unfortunately, a lot of modern day liberal scholars are going to run with the fact that in Augustine and Cyril, they both use the term guilt. Augustine will use it, and Cyril will use it as well. Cyril uses it multiple times. But what they do not do is they do not exegete or look at the context. They're going to say, look, you guys don't believe in original sin. These are liberals. You guys believe in original guilt, meaning that all of the human race is guilty of the sin of Adam and Eve. And that's not what we're teaching. In fact, when Cyril is talking about it, Cyril will say, as a result of our fallen nature, we become guilty through our own actions after. So that makes sense. Yeah, I have a fallen nature. And then when I commit sin, I am guilty of sin. That's what Augustine says in Cyril. But people don't focus in the context. They're not teaching, oh, we are personally culpable for what our forefathers did. No father is saying that. Are we guilty? Yeah, because as a result of being fallen and committing sin, that's why we need confession. That's why we need the sacraments, which our Oriental brothers would agree to as well.
Yeah. As
a result of that fallen nature, we do commit sins. We do need to clean ourselves up. We do need to get to confession. We do need to get to Holy Mass. And that is what the fathers are talking about through all of the centuries.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you find in your knowledge of the different cultures of patristics that there are those who emphasize like the sanctification that comes through the sacraments versus those who emphasize what we like the negative things that we lose when we partake of the sacraments?
Yeah.
Is there a difference in emphasis, or do they all do all of that?
Well, let's see. I mean, I have some here that I brought, but that's a great question. I've never thought of it to give an answer.
I never thought of that either.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It goes with the Mary stuff, because
yeah.
if we're saying, okay, what was she purified from?
Sure.
See? And it's like, well, what did she gain?
Yeah.
What did she lose? You see it's like if those who are emphasizing our restoration to the grace that we were created in when we're baptized versus those who emphasize what did we lose in the baptism.
Yeah.
Whatever negative thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of St. John Chrysostom, who would emphasize what we gain.
Yeah.
I know that much.
Yeah.
I
wonder if it's an East-West thing.
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. Because I know the West will emphasize what we lost, grace. But the reason why I hesitate is because the West will also say that what we gain too.
And it could be they both sides do all of it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question.
Yeah.
Someone should write a thesis on that.
Yeah.
It's a good question. So the Council of Orange Council of Carthage. Where are you guys at with that? Do you guys
the 397?
419. This one's 419.
Well,
it might be in the Coptic stuff.
It is. Okay. No, it is 100%. But let me just emphasize, 419 is pretty much echoing much of 397. So, yeah, and you do find that in the Coptic stuff. I got that confirmed to me by a Coptic Orthodox scholar a few years ago.
Got it.
Okay, sweet. So this is Canon 110 from Carthage 419 AD. It says, likewise, it seemed good that whosoever denies that infants newly from their mother's wombs should be baptized, or says that baptism is for remission of sins, but that they derive from Adam no original sin, which needs to be removed by the laver of regeneration, from whence the conclusion follows, that in them the form of baptism for the remission of sins is to be understood as false and not true, let it be anathema. And then it says, for no otherwise can be understood what the apostle says, by one man sin has come into the world, and death through sin, and so death passed upon all men, and all have sinned. Then the Catholic Church, everywhere diffused, has always understood it. For on account of this rule of faith, even infants who would have committed as yet no sin themselves, therefore are truly baptized for the remission of sins, in order that one in them is the result of generation may be cleansed by regeneration. So there's an example of a negative, right? So they commit sin, and they're regenerated.
Can you send the quote in our WhatsApp group when you get a chance after?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can actually do that right now, because I have that thing open.
The greatest WhatsApp group in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you talking about the one with three of us or everybody?
The three of us.
Either. Up to you. Whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. That one is super duper 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 secret.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to send that right now.
So Dioscoros is saying Carthage is an extension of Ephesus for us. I didn't even know that.
I didn't know that either. That's great information, though. Yeah. Great information. I knew how important it was, but that's fantastic. That's great information. Yeah, no doubt. And to be very clear, I think, in my opinion, when we look at, in particular, the topic of baptism, and of course, Elijah, you can correct me if you think that there are better, but in my humble opinion, when we look at how the great Saint Ephraim, I got that hammered in me years ago when I began working with Father Coppus. He made sure to tell me he would knock me over the head if I didn't give the saints their proper due. Saint Ephraim.
Yeah.
He would always remind me. I could be on the phone with him. I'd mention Ephraim or any saint, and I would just say Ephraim. He'd say, "Hey, Saint Ephraim, you're right. You are right. You're right." Yeah. So my humble opinion is that you look at Saint Ephraim, Saint Jacob, and the incredible Syriac tradition, and the description of baptism is so illuminating. Isn't it incredible? Very different. And I'm not denigrating. I'm not putting down the other fathers. But the particular way the Syriacs lay it out, I cannot emphasize enough the amazing beauty of it. Would you agree with that, Elijah and Subdeacon?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. How can you disagree with that? Yeah.
I think, and I'm obviously biased, but I think in that lens, if Christianity is looked at, because my world is Eastern, like I deal with Eastern people. So come from different Eastern religions that are neighbors to us, etc. If they look at Christianity through that lens, the lens of Ephraim and Jacob and the Syriac tradition, it would change so many misconceptions, so many things. Even the Jews, the Orthodox Jews, if they look at Christianity through that Semitic Eastern Syriac perspective, it hits home more.
Sure. Yep.
Once that door is open, it's just going to blow open for the Muslims and the Jews. You know what I mean? Versus what is like, mainstream Western, it's going to be foreign to them. Like when they look at it, it's not going to be as close. And so when they're describing these things, the beauty of them is because Semitic languages are so poetic,
right?
By nature, just the language itself is a poetic language.
Yeah. So, I mean, that on that point, let me just say one particular thing.
Yeah.
Our evangelical friends do not know the beauty of it. Yesterday, Subdeacon, by the way, thank you so much for being an incredible debate moderator.
It was my pleasure, William. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, brother. By the grace of God, thank the good Lord, it went very, very well. I defended the bodily assumption of Mary. But what I heavily relied upon was St. Jacob and St. Ephraim. And I bring that up because in the closing statement of my Calvinist interlocutor, he said, William didn't provide anything. All he did was read poems. The fact that they do not understand the beauty of St. Jacob and St. Ephraim and accuse me of simply reading poems shows me Protestantism are confused. They don't know the fathers at all. And that tells me everything. Have you ever heard that? Have they ever told you that, brother? Have you ever heard that silliness?
I haven't, because again, in our culture, poems are a big deal.
Of course.
So, yeah.
Of course.
So when if you are missing that, I'm not the person to convince you or talk to you. William Albrecht is. Like I'm like, if you can't see what I'm seeing when I read St. Ephraim and St. Jacob, like I don't know if I told you guys this before. You probably have heard me say it. In the Syriac church, we have hymns that they wrote. We chant them on Sunday, that pertaining to the week, the liturgical week of whatever the occasion. So we'll be chanting them. And so for example, one of the lines we get to a part where we say, like we're commemorating the apostles and the prophets. And we get to a part where we say about David the prophet, we say, who is the harp of the Holy Spirit. And it's the chorus. So we repeat it 2 times. When we say it the second time, though, we say Ephraim. We don't say David. Ephraim, the harp of the Holy Spirit. So what are we doing here? We're equating Ephraim with David. And we're saying his hymns are just as inspired as David's hymns are. So this is the meaning of Ephraim and Jacob to the Syriac churches. They're such a big deal, and they are really the pillars for Syriac theology.
No, of course, absolutely. And the debate yesterday was it on the assumption? How did you answer the question when he asked you if Mary's body was made out of carbs or protein?
To be honest with you, brother, his questions were along those lines of being terrible. Wow. Now, within, as you both know, and by the way, he tried to get a jab in towards the end on Mary having original sin. Of course, I don't know why he even tossed that in, but another argument he made, which was shocking. I mentioned multiple times how in the Syriac tradition, in the Greek tradition, and the Latin, the fathers viewed Mary as the new ark. Ephraim speaks about her. Jacob does as well, as the new ark of the new covenant. His rebuttal to me, and I am not joking with you, Spanish speaker can confirm it. His rebuttal to me was, man, you guys think Mary was a literal box? That shows me, and that was the stupidity, his reply. You think Mary was a literal box? He doesn't understand the parallelism that if we view Saint Mary as the new Ark of the Covenant, that's because of her incredible resplendent beauty, her overwhelming holiness. And this shows me that, unfortunately, our Protestant friends are so disconnected from the reality of apostolic Christianity. They are at the point where, in the debate, I brought up one point. I said, if the early fathers believed in the Dormition and the Assumption of Mary, and then I even tossed in the proto-reformers and the first reformers, said if all of these believed it, even Martin Luther, who celebrated the feast every year, why on earth do modern-day Protestants reject it? He didn't care.
You know, I'm at the point now with Protestants, William, that they are in open rebellion. Like, it's not even a matter of
100%.
Yeah, like once they start asking questions like, "Oh, you're saying she's the box?" Like, bro, what are you doing? Yeah. And then about proteins and carbs and like this keeps getting worse.
Yeah. The thing with Protestants is that they view the church fathers as if they're individual lay people with a Bible and they're interpreting it. And so they're like, "Oh, look how this guy interprets it. He agrees with me," as if this guy that they're quoting from, let's say whoever it is, right? St. Augustine, as if this guy is disconnected from St. Ambrose or St. Cyril. Like these guys are bishops of one church, right? But they don't view them as that. They don't view that there's one church out there. They view them as each individual layperson equal to them that are just opening the Bible and interpreting it. That's the first problem with Protestantism. That's why they get it all wrong, right? They're looking at them the wrong way.
100%.
They don't see a one church there. Well, they'll say it's one church in their own version of what church means, but that's not how the fathers looked at what the church means. There's a problem right there.
Of course.
But I do have another quote from St. Gregory of Nyssa. If you guys want me to read this.
Definitely,
please,
brother.
And this is an emphasis. The reason why I have this quote is because it's for those that say it's just the death of the body, right? And here it's almost like he's answering them. He says, "Now it was not the body merely, but the whole man, compacted of soul and body, that was lost. Indeed, if we are to speak more exactly, the soul was lost sooner than the body. For disobedience is a sin not of the body, but of the will. And the will properly belongs to the soul, from which the whole disaster of our nature had its beginning. As the thread of God that admits of no falsehood testifies in the declaration that in the day that they should eat of the forbidden fruit, death without respite would attach to the act. Now, since the condemnation of man was twofold, death correspondingly affects in each part of our nature that deprivation of the twofold life that operates in him who is thus mortally stricken. For the death of the body consists in the extinction of the means of sensible perception, and in the dissolution of the body in its kindred elements. But the soul that sins, he says, it shall die. Ezekiel 18:20. Now sin is nothing else than alienation from God, who is the true and only life. Accordingly, the first man lived many hundred years after his disobedience, and yet God lied not when he said, in the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die. For by the fact of his alienation from that true life, the sentence of death was ratified against him that same day. And after this, at a much later time, there followed also the bodily death of Adam. That's against Eunomius, book 2, 13. And then I can also send that to you, Sabdeacon, if you want.
Yeah, that would be great.
Great quotes, brother. Those are fantastic.
Yeah. So he's talking about there's two deaths. And the first death was the death of the soul. So what is the death of the soul? If we're only talking about death of the body, then what the heck is the death of the soul? It can't be the same thing. It's the alienation from God, right? You're alienated from God now, right? You don't have any salvation. You're not saved anymore. You're done. You die, you go to hell. That's what death of the soul is.
Yeah.
And that even goes to Polemos. Polemos' quotes that very similar to this, right?
Oh yeah.
But I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on this. I do have St. Cyril of Alexandria next.
Beautiful. That's going to be
love it. Can't wait to hear it. Love it.
Well, and you said you have Athanasius too, I think, right?
Athanasius too, yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
So I'm going to send this to you guys here. That's okay. Do you guys want me to read it now?
Definitely, brother.
Okay. So Cyril of Alexandria, he says, "What has Adam's guilt got to do with us? Why are we held responsible for his sin when we were not even born when he committed it? Did not God say, the parents will not die for the children, nor the children for the parents, but the soul which has sinned, it shall die? How then shall we defend this doctrine? The soul, I say, which has sinned, it shall die. We have become sinners because of Adam's disobedience in the following manner. After he fell into the sin and surrendered to corruption, impure lusts invaded the nature of his flesh, and at the same time the evil law of our members was born. For our nature contracted the disease of sin because of the disobedience of one man, that is Adam, and thus many became sinners. This was not because they sinned along with Adam, because they did not then exist, but because they had the same nature as Adam, which fell under the law of sin. Thus, just as human nature acquired the weakness of corruption in Adam because of disobedience and evil desires invaded it, so the same nature was later set free by Christ, who was obedient to God the Father and did not commit sin." I mean, that's a beautiful summary of what we should all believe, right? It's pretty simple, basic
Amen
stuff.
to that.
Yeah. So it's not something we're guilty of. It's just our state. It's just reality, right? It's just a reality. Reality is we're void of grace. We're void of original holiness. That's just what happens. And we have to say something about this reality. This reality means that you're not saved, that you're bound to go to hell, right? Basically, or at least you're bound not to go to heaven. Put it that way. If you're going to hold to limbo. Yeah, go ahead.
In this, what do you call it? Like system or anthropology or whatever.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, before humanity was restored by Christ, etc., the holiness of the saints and the prophets in the Old Testament, how was it achieved? How was it possible?
Faith for the coming Messiah, I would assume, right?
Right, but what I mean is like, for them to be found righteous by God while still in the pre-baptism state, like you said, it's more of they, because only when they died they still have to go to the Abraham's bosom.
Sure.
Right.
Now, so then we can maybe conclude from that it prevents one from entering paradise.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily bind them to be damned.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Yep. Yeah, that's why I was saying it's not necessarily they're bound to hell, but they're just not they're not bound to heaven, right? Because I personally believe in limbo, but you don't have to believe in limbo. Like,
what's limbo?
Limbo for you, what would limbo be? You believe in the Augustinian view or what kind?
So that the infants, if they die without baptism, they have natural happiness, right? They're not suffering, right? So that they don't have the beatific vision because they didn't do anything to deserve hell, but they didn't do anything to deserve heaven.
Okay.
Right. So I believe in limbo. Now I don't die on that hill because it's not a dogma in the church. That's just my personal opinion. If you believe that.
Do you, because I'm curious, let me just probe your brain a little bit.
Sure.
Do you think it is possible for them to ever enter into heaven? Heavenly glory?
No. The reason why is because the fathers that believed in limbo, they just left it at that. So I have no foundation to say that they eventually would go to heaven because no father that held to limbo. I think Gregory held to it, Augustine obviously, and the Western fathers after him. A lot of them held to limbo. Very harsh version of it sometimes not.
No doubt.
Depending on who you're reading, but I'd like to think that they would go to heaven, obviously, but the church doesn't even say that. Like even today, even though we have the Catholic Church, who today is like a very nice church. They always try to say something nice, right? They don't like to say negative things anymore, like they used to, where they kind of hammer down things more. Now it's just how can we make this work in the modern society? They say that we have hope that children are saved without baptism. We have hope for infants, but it doesn't say that they are saved. right? They don't go that far. So I don't go that far. I can't say that they are. I can say that we have hope and that there's probably a limbo, but that's just my personal opinion. But I don't know if we're allowed in the Catholic Church to teach that infants without baptism for sure go to heaven, because the church doesn't have that stance. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
What are your particular thoughts, Subdeacon? Do you hold to limbo, or do you think that unbaptized baby would go to heaven? An unbaptized baby that passes away, that would unfortunately pass away. Yeah, I think it's
so. My bishop and my priest teach that they don't go to heaven.
Okay.
Now, I don't know, but what we know is he says, I think, to Nicodemus in John 3, unless you are born of water and the Spirit, enter the kingdom. So we have emergency baptisms in the hospitals right when the baby are born, things like this. But at the end of the day, God is the judge. Thank God. Thank God he's the judge, because he loves.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Him, and he's merciful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We pretty much put it in the way that I see it, rather than me holding to one position or the other. Personally, I believe that they eventually do go to heaven. That's what I personally believe.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
But
I hope you're right.
I think that the reason I think of that is because of the infinite grace of God, which, of course, that's why we rely upon that incredible infinite grace of the Lord. But I know certain fathers had certain opinions on this. It never became dogmatic in the church. So,
sure. Yep.
Without a doubt, a theological opinion that I think is worthy to dialogue about, to discuss. But above everything else, I want to emphasize one thing, and I emphasize it to everybody. If able, of course, I understand there are situations when a baby, unfortunately, passes away before a baby has any opportunity for baptism. But I tell my apostolic Christian friends and evangelical friends, baptize your babies. Don't delay. Do not delay.
Do it don't wait 3 months or 4 months. Or you have to wait for this particular day because this party,
don't do that.
Family's going to be over in 3 months. We're just going to do it then. Like even if you think they're going to go to heaven, you don't know, right? We don't know. Like who cares what we think? What we know is that if they're baptized, they're going to heaven. We know that.
Absolutely.
That's all. That should be the motivation behind it.
You reminded me of something. So there's a village in Syria. A couple, I think. There's Zaydal and Fayruza. These two villages.
Yeah.
In Syria. They're Syriac Orthodox villages. They don't baptize their kids till they're like teenagers.
Wow.
These two villages, and everyone, the patriarch, the synod, the bishops, everyone's, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Everyone's telling them to stop. Like there's so much pressure on them to stop doing this. I think now they're coming around to it, but they were doing this thing where they want to have all their kids and then baptize them all at the same time. So where are you getting this from?
Protestants.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
at that point, the kids have a choice. You don't want to take it to where they have a choice.
Right.
No. You got to baptize them now. Yeah. I got another quote here that I already read St. Cyril, right? Here's another one from St. Cyril. He says, thus has the guilt of the disobedience that is by Adam been remitted. Thus has the power of the curse ceased, and the dominion of the death been brought to decay. And this too, Paul teaches, saying, for as by the disobedience of the one man, the many became sinners, so by the obedience of the one, the many became righteous. For the whole nature of man became guilty in the person of him who was first formed. But now it is wholly justified again in Christ, for he became for us the second commencement of our race after the primary one, and therefore all things in him have become new. And there is the idea of guilt again, how all have become guilty. Again, not because of personal sin, but because of our state.
So I have a Catholic friend who he just texted me. He said Pope Benedict was clear on. We were talking about the limbo and the babies.
Yeah.
Pope Benedict was clear on this. And then he's going to get me the source. And
Sure.
he said it's too narrow of a view of God's mercy to think he would abandon unbaptized infants.
Yeah.
So let's see what the source is that he's going to say.
I think that was the first thing he did as a pope.
It was. Yeah.
First thing he did as a pope. He came out with something that's because before he was pope, the question of limbo. Well, first of all, the question of limbo was being taught as if it was the teaching of the church for many centuries, right? Mm-hmm. And then that kind of dwindled down, kind of died out, and then he answered the question. If his question that he was answering is this the official teaching of the church? And his answer was no. You can still hold it as an opinion.
Yeah. Theological.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I say I'm not going to die on this hill because it's an opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hope it's a wrong opinion. That's that's one teaching I hope I'm wrong on,
No doubt.
I hope every unbaptized infant goes to heaven.
Yeah. He's just sent it to me. He sent me the source. The quote is, the conclusion of the study is that there are theological, liturgical reasons to hope that infants who die without baptism may be saved and brought.
No, it's real. No, I know it's real. That's a real quote.
Oh yeah,
we don't doubt it at all. It's a real quote. Yeah.
The official that was kind of like his stance, but the official stance of the Catholic Church today, official stance, if we were going to put an official stance, is what happens to unbaptized babies is we hope they go to heaven. That's the answer.
Yeah.
And so that means that there's a chance, or else we wouldn't hope.
Of course, absolutely. There definitely is a chance. And that's why I'm saying I hope I'm wrong in here because I know there's a possibility that they can go to heaven. But my point here is, since it's an unknown, baptize your babies as soon as possible. Don't wait 3 months.
No doubt.
Don't even wait a month. Like do it within like a week, maybe 2. Like you got to just do it as soon as possible. Forget the party.
Even the 40 days, 80 days that the Orthodox do, if it's a boy or a girl, 40, 80, even that I think sometimes it's too much. Like just baptize them.
Yeah. I would be like, I would have anxiety, bro.
Me
like,
too.
Your baby's sleeping. Is like, you go the next morning. He's like, all right, are they alive? Like I got to make sure they make it to the 40 or 80 days. I didn't know there was a such 40. So what happens 40? Is it boy and 80 girl?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Poor girls, man.
Yeah.
I know in the in the early church, wasn't it like when they started baptizing infants, wasn't it like 6 days?
Between 6 and 8, I believe.
6 and 8.
In the Syriac church, William probably knows this. St. Ephraim's time, they were baptizing adults. That's why you have these 2 leftover villages still messing up on it. Yeah.
Yep. I think it's I think it was my mother-in-law who said that when my wife was born, she went from the hospital to the church to baptize her.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's very common. Like in back then, I say back then, maybe like 50 to 100 years ago. Yeah, it's like the first week baptized.
Right.
Sometimes out of the hospital to the church.
Infant mortality, things like this.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't know. Know. There's a lot of unknown about it. So.
Right.
Should we move on to?
Do it.
I'll go ahead. I don't know if you want to read this.
Oh, the traditional priests tend to encourage to just baptize the kid quick. The canon of 40 to 80 days has its benefits, but pastorally, it's overshadowed by the grace of baptismal necessity. Absolutely.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Yep. Totally.
So we're going to move to a Western father. So that's St. Ambrose. He says, in whom, that is in Adam, all have sinned. And he said, in whom, using the masculine form, when he was speaking of a woman, because the reference was not to a specific individual, but to the race. It is clear, therefore, that all have sinned in Adam, in mass as it were. For when he himself was corrupted by sin, all whom he begot were born under sin. On his account, then, all are sinners, because we were all from him. He lost God's favor when he strayed. It's not, this is very simple stuff. Like, why are we even debating this? Not you and us here, but like, why is there even a debate? I quoted Eastern Fathers, and here's a Western Father, and, I got St. John Chrysostom next. They're all saying the same thing. I don't understand what the big deal is. We're all sinners, whether we commit sin or not. We're born into a state of sin.
That's true. What Nectarios is saying is true also.
Was to allow the women to recover from having. I see. Okay, makes sense. And then we get to St. John Chrysostom. He says, you see how many are the benefits of baptism. And this is where you were talking about, Subdeacon, the positives, right? Here's the positive. He talks about the positives of that. Benefits of baptism. And some think its heavenly grace consists only in the remission of sins. But we have enumerated 10 honors. For this reason, we baptize even infants, though they are not defiled by sin, so that there may be given to them holiness, righteousness, adoption, inheritance, brotherhood with Christ, and that they may be his members. And I think this is where the confusion is, because he says that they may not be, he says that they, what does he say here? Not defiled by sin. What he's talking about is they're not defiled by personal sin. They haven't committed any personal sin, right? Well, the other ones, when they say that we are defiled by sin, they're talking about original sin.
Yeah. Who is this? Who is this that you read?
This is St. John Chrysostom.
And the one before was who?
Ambrose. St. Ambrose. Yeah.
If you can send both of those whenever you get a chance.
Absolutely. I'm going to copy paste all
those. Those are great, brother.
Yeah.
And then he also says, this is St. John Chrysostom as well. He says, little given, much gotten. By the donation of food, the original sin is discharged. Just as Adam transmitted the sin by his wicked eating, we destroy that treacherous food when we cure the need and hunger of our brother. I just thought it was an interesting quote. And then we have Saint Athanasius, which will be the last one that I do. I had other ones, but I think these ones are the best ones. Saint Athanasius says, God not only made us out of nothing, but he also gave us freely, by the grace of the word, a life divinely oriented. But men rejected the things of eternity, and on the prompting of the devil, turned to the things of corruption. They became the cause of their own corruption and death. For as I said before, they were by nature corruptible, but were destined by the grace of the communion of the word to have escaped the consequences of nature. Excuse me, had they remained good. Because of the word and his dwelling among them, even the corruption natural to them would not have affected them. And here's the idea of, we were incorruptible. We were supposed to have all these things, and then we were incorruptible. Then we became corruptible, because we followed the promptings of the devil and turned to the things of corruption. So whatever we did, we turned to the devil. We turned to corruption. Those are the consequences that God gave us. Right. And he warned them, you will die. That's a consequence. Right. And so those are the quotes that I had. I don't know if you guys have any quotes or thoughts or anything at all.
This is really great. I'm happy that we're doing this. Because you guys, I think you guys know we have a part 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's important, and I'm gonna make these their own playlist, and then because I'm having these sit downs here locally about the same topic. Our bishops are talking about this topic.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're pulling up the original Syriac here. We're pulling up Jacob and Ephraim, and we're discussing these things over here. So
maybe we need to get that guy debated, Wister Medina, to tell us what the Syriac means.
Yeah, seriously.
And I'm planning to, in the future, I want to have Coptic Orthodox priests, the ones I had on the last show. I don't know if you guys caught it, about the letter of Alexandria. I want to have them on to discuss this very topic too, because I think there's a lot to be said about it. Really, it's the starting point. It's the starting point of the conversation before anything else. So it's very important.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Like, okay, we agree on the sacraments, but what are the sacraments saving us from?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So we need to really talk about that. I didn't even know. By the way, William, I know you are the one with you are in touch with a lot of the scholars in the apostolic Christian world. I don't even know if you are with the Protestants or not, but especially with ours. Do you have any relations with Father Dragas?
I don't.
Okay.
No,
okay.
I don't. I am in touch with a few Protestant scholars. That I am, to be clear.
Yeah. I don't know what his view is. I don't know if he's the Roman 80s guy or what. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because he's a big deal in the EO world, you know.
He is. Unfortunately, a lot of these guys that are a big deal won't even dialogue because I guess they think that we're gonna, I don't know, press them on issues. So they won't even dialogue. I mean, I'm not even talking about debating. I'm saying a lot of them won't even have a dialogue, which is unfortunate, you know.
Got it.
I think that's unfortunate.
Elijah, have you talked, or maybe William too, have either of you talked to the TOs, like Father Suwaden and them, about this topic? Do you know if they agree or no?
Yeah. I did a show with Suwaden on Immaculate Conception, and naturally Original Sin came up, and he seems to agree with this. Yeah. He seems to agree with this. Yeah.
Suwaden knows me. He knows me quite well.
Yeah. And you did a debate with him on Immaculate Conception. So I don't know if that topic came up.
Father Dragas is a disciple of Roman 80s. Okay.
There you go.
And then I know you guys have talked to Craig. And Father Ramsey, I'm guessing they agree with each other. The Assyrian Church of the East, I'm guessing, believes what we believe. The Syriac Orthodox, Assyrian Church of the East are almost the same on everything. It's just the Christology stuff.
Right.
So I'm guessing the Assyrian Church of the East has the same view that we have on this.
I would be shocked if they didn't.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. I think Craig truly has the same beliefs on Original Sin as well.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm pretty confident he does. At least the essentials, right? I know there's different things that we can disagree on that are kind of irrelevant when it comes to what we're talking about, but they could be relevant on other things. But yeah,
it seems like the disagreement comes in the context of like corruptibility, like what that includes.
Yes.
So is death native to us or not, kind of thing. I don't know. I wish I was smarter to understand like the intricacies of these conversations.
Yeah, I wish you were smarter too, man.
Then the next show will be the Atonement.
I cannot wait for that. Now, I don't know about you guys. I've done a ton of work there. I have slides that I want to present. If you all have some, we can.
No, beautiful.
I can't wait for that.
I can't wait to see what you guys have.
Wait till you guys see what I got on Jacob and Ephraim there.
Awesome,
wait till you see.
Awesome. This is amazing.
Yeah, that's
pumped for that.
William, next week is going to be William. Yeah, that's going to be all William. So I'm actually going to be sitting here like a student.
We'll do that. I can't wait for that, guys. I'm excited for that.
I sent Elijah a Syriac hymn, and he goes, I don't know if you remember this, Elijah, it was a while ago. I sent you a hymn we were chanting on Sunday Mass, and you go, this is exactly what we believe about the Atonement.
I vaguely remember this. Yeah. And you know what's funny is Saint Jacob, his homily on I think it's the Mother of God, where he talks about the angel when she comes and descends, and you know the whole thing where we've even done a show on this homily, broken it down. If you take a look at what he believes on what happens pre-fall, it is exactly the same as what the Western Church believes, Roman Catholic Church. It's the same. Doubt. Like he says that original grace that you had, that we had before the fall, original grace, right there, grace.
Yeah.
And then he says he talks about how now we have concupiscence because of the fall. And there's two other things that I forgot. I can't come up with them, but they were very not Western, because it's not a Western thing. It's a patristic thing, right? I don't want to call it a Western thing.
Yeah.
It's a patristic thing. I do have one more thing, if you guys don't mind. It's
definitely.
What does the word stain mean? And when we say that we have the stain of original sin. What does that mean? Yeah. So here's I have three different things. So number one, it's in reference to this. So that man is born without the original holiness and grace that Adam and Eve enjoyed prior to the fall. Okay. Number two, that man is born under the dominion of the devil. And number three, that man is born with an inclination to sin. So when we talk about stain in the Catholic Church, that's what we're talking about, right?
Got it.
Those three
so
things.
It's the
inclination, and also not having the original holiness that Adam had received. So if you don't have the original holiness, just like you talked about the negatives and the positives, this is a negative. So now you kind of have like this stain, or as in Chaldea would say, like shechta.
Yeah.
You know, like it's in your soul, right? You got to remove it. So baptism washes it away, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we mean by stain.
And you to add to that, it is a very biblical concept, because you find that word used in Ephesians 5:27, the Greek for stained, to present to the church himself in splendor, without stain or spot or wrinkle or anything of the kind. And you can look at any analytical Greek lexicon, it's spot, stain. And then it also appears in 1 Timothy 6:14. Keep the commandment without spot or blame. Same exact Greek word for stain there. You also find in Jeremiah 2:22, though you wash yourself with lye and use much soap, the stain of your guilt is still before me, says the Lord God. So he's guilty of sin. And, you know, the Lord is saying, look, as much as you wash yourself over and over, you are guilty of a particular kind of sin that you've committed. So it's not just a Latin utilization when we talk about sin as a stain. It's very, very biblical and very patristic.
And it's very impressive. I don't know if that's the right word, that when you think of the Old Testament saints and prophets who overcame this stain without the grace of baptism, right?
Oh yeah.
To still live a life of holiness and blamelessness in some cases. Yeah. It's really inspiring.
It just goes to show that, you know, God is not bound by his sacraments, right? He can do whatever he wants, right? And and that goes back to the question of unbaptized infants. God is not bound by sacraments. He can save without baptism, not just infants, but, you know, people that have the desire to be baptized, and they're on their way to be baptized and they get hit by a car. You know, I think God looks at their intentions. He doesn't just say, oh, they were baptized automatically in hell.
Of course.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, guys. I love these. They're very kind of straightforward. They're an hour each. The next one on the Atonement I'm really excited for it. Is next Tuesday work for you guys?
Oh yeah.
Same
Fantastic.
time?
Works great for me.
Beautiful.
Great.
All right.
Still, brothers.
Appreciate
God bless you guys. Thank
God
you.
bless you, brother.
You guys want to announce, plug, tell everyone you want to look out for anything?
Let me put a plug in. I'll give Elijah the last word. Sure. For you guys just to know, God willing, sometime in August, and we need to lay down a date soon. We're going to do what I think is going to be an incredible show. We're going to look at the great Saint Jacob of Sarug and a particular text that he delivered at a council in the 400s. And the text is all about the Dormition and the bodily assumption of Mary. But we're going to go line by line. We're going to read the whole letter, and we're going to put to bed the lie that certain liberals try to say that Jacob denied a bodily assumption of St. Mary. We're going to prove definitively, and by the way, I've been in touch with Dr. Brock on particular Syriac words used there that we will talk about when we go live and do that show. I am really, really, really looking forward to that show.
That's awesome, man. I love those kind of shows. We haven't done those in a while.
We're going to do it.
Yeah.
Elijah, anything?
My YouTube channel is called Underground Catholicism. There has been, I know I've gone back and forth with Ubi Petrus, and he finally put out the full video he did against me, and so I'll be responding to that video, God willing, in fall. So I finally got to hear the whole thing, because I've only heard half of it or however long he puts it on for free, but he just released the whole thing. I heard the whole thing, and I wasn't impressed. So I'll be responding to that in the fall, God willing.
Beautiful. I can't wait. I didn't even know that guy was still around. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
sort of still around, sort of.
I'm trying to check right now, making sure you guys. Yeah, see, I put it in the description last time, not this time. I'm gonna put your channels both in the description this time.
Thanks, bro. It's okay.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thanks again, you guys, and I look forward to next time.
God bless you both.
God bless you both. Yeah, thank you.
Subscribe, share, all that stuff. Take care, everybody.
شمشي